Well, good morning and good afternoon good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to welcome you to this side event hosted by UNFPA alongside with the 65th session of the Commission on the Status of Women entitled Bodily Autonomy and Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights for Generation Equality. What kind of leadership is it needed? Before we kickstart our event today, I would like to remind you, everyone, that we have interpretation in French, Arabic, and Spanish. Please go to the global icon at the bottom of your screen and click on it to choose your preferred language. If you would like to share reflections or questions, please use the chat box function. Engage with our conversation online using hashtag CSW65th, hashtag Generation Equality, and tag speakers and organizations if you can. My name is Eunice Garcia, and I am the Executive Director of the Youth Coalition for Sexual and Reproductive Rights. Our objective for today's event are to underscore how women's bodily autonomy and decision-making on SRHR is a cornerstone of promoting gender equality, sexual and reproductive health outcomes, and achievement of all sustainable development goals within the decade of action. We will also showcase and raise awareness about the use and global coverage of the Sustainable Development Goals data for Target 5.6 as part of national and global efforts to advance gender equality and women's rights. Finally, we want to ensure we talk about how and what kind of women leadership is critical for realizing a future generation of equality and for promoting bodily autonomy and SRHR. Our goal is to ensure that through this and many other stepping stones, we continue to build the young feminist movement advocating for bodily autonomy on SRHR. For me, representing the Youth Coalition, this topic is critical because young people are leading the discussions on bodily autonomy. Young people have made it very clear that it takes more than contraceptions and access to safe abortions to accomplish bodily autonomy, and the Youth Coalition is working very hard to make sure that young voices in all their diversity are meaningfully represented and participating in SRHR decision-making. The Youth Coalition believes that there cannot be youth-centered policies without meaningful youth engagement. And now, to officially begin the program, we would like to show a brief video from the Executive Director of UNFPA, Natalia Kanem.
Distinguished guests, colleagues, and friends, today's conversations and negotiations about CSW 65 call important attention to a critical dimension of women's decision-making, a girl and woman's ability to take decisions about her own body. Why is bodily autonomy so important? It enables a woman to exercise her rights and her political and economic power. When a woman or a girl can say, "My body is my own," and make her own choices about her body, she gains autonomy over her health. Her education, her income, and her safety improve. Bodily autonomy is the foundation for gender equality, for more prosperous societies, and for a more durable peace. This benefits us all. Last year, UNFPA published the first global data on women's decision-making in sexual and reproductive health, showing that only 57% of women can make their own decisions about the most fundamental aspects of their bodies and lives. This means that millions of women and girls are denied their right to have a say in sexual matters, to say yes to contraception, and to make their own healthcare choices. This world must become one where every woman and girl's body is truly her own. Today, with this assembly of inspiring and courageous women to share their insights on how together we all ensure women's bodily autonomy is protected, respected, and fulfilled everywhere, I am certain that this will be a fruitful discussion that leads to the action that this world needs now. Thank you.
And now it is my pleasure to hand the floor to Diane Keita, Deputy Executive Director of Programs at UNFPA, who will set the scene on how and why this topic is important to us. Diane, the floor is yours.
Thank you so very much, dear moderator, Ernest. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, friends and colleagues, dear Katerina Furtado, our dear goodwill ambassador, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observers, Excellences, mesdames et messieurs, en vos rangs, grades et qualités. A woman's freedom to make decisions regarding her body is critical to her empowerment. When she can exercise authority over her own body, she is better able to stay healthy, help her family stay healthy, and to participate fully in social, political, and economic life. The 1994 International Conference on Population and Development affirmed that securing reproductive health, individual rights, and women's empowerment is the obligation of every country and is central to inclusive and sustainable development. In 2019, at the ICPD Plus 25 Nairobi Summit, the commitment to protect and ensure all individuals' right to bodily integrity, autonomy, and reproductive rights was reaffirmed once more. Despite these advances and commitment, a woman rights to make—
Second, please. For the interpreters, the Arabic interpretation is mixed. Is coming into the English channel. Thank you. I am sorry, Diane.
Should I continue?
Yes, please.
All right. In 2019, at the ICPD Plus 25 Nairobi Summit, the commitment to protect and ensure all individuals' rights to bodily integrity, autonomy, and reproductive rights was reaffirmed once more. Despite these advances and commitment, a woman's right to make her own choices is far from being fulfilled all over the world. As noted by the executive director of UNFPA, the data UNFPA has collected under the SDG target 5.6 on universal access to sexual and reproductive health shows alarming results. From 64 countries where we have data, only 57% of women of reproductive age can make their own decision regarding sexual relation, contraceptive use, and healthcare. When it comes to marriage, girls and women are still at high risk in many parts of the world from being able to choose when and who they marry. Behind this disturbing data lies the fact that women in many parts of the world lack the power to claim their right to make the critical choices relating to her own sexuality and reproduction. Women face barriers that are not only social, cultural, and political, but also legal. In over 29% of the country, women and adolescents need permission from their husband or family to access contraceptive or to be tested for HIV. And 10% of the country, a woman needs to be married or have her husband permission in order to access maternal health services. We also know that vulnerable groups, such as adolescent girls, indigenous women, women with disability, and migrant women, face even greater challenges in exercising autonomy due to the multi-layers of discrimination, stigma, and exclusion. UNFPA has been at the forefront of efforts to empower women and adolescent girls to exercise their sexual and reproductive autonomy. We have also been leading the way in making global data available on women's decision-making for sexual and reproductive health and laws that guarantee access to services. We strengthen data, analysis, and evidence to inform policy making and enable the voice of women and girls. Excellencies, we call for action. Where government and civil society rally around the centrality of women's bodily autonomy for achieving gender equality, sustainable development happens. That is what the decade of action is about. leaving no one behind. Je vous remercie de votre aimable attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Diane, for this really critical framing and from bringing the aspect of data and the social opportunity we have now to use data from SDG target 5.6 to popular advocacy forward. And I think that what Diane just said is really critical, especially because right now there are like many challenges in the world. And I just want to flag that young people's participation is critical to achieve this. As Diane just said, we are calling for action and young people are very keen into making these changes happen. So thank you very much for those remarks. And now I would like to introduce Fatma Bulik, who is a project coordinator at the Information Center for Persons with Disability, LOTOS, in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Fatma, as a young woman advocating for gender equality, how do you see your leadership role in supporting other young women being able to make their decisions and choices about their bodies? The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I hope you can all hear me well. Well, my name is Fatma Bulic and I come from Bosnia and Herzegovina. I won't talk about myself much. I really don't like it. Today, I will talk about all women, for women who face various contradictions in life every day, with violence, with reduced economic income, with invisibility in society, for those women that none of us sees, who are forgotten, but also to those strong who break everything in front of them, leaders, and who become a prisoner in their home. Do you know how many such women there are? A lot. According to data, every third woman is a victim of violence, and that is a terrible fact. We must become mistresses of our bodies from an early age. Bodily autonomy is the right of every person to decide what happens to their body without the influence of other people. Women who are aware that only she have the right to decide what to do with body will find it harder to become a victims of some kind of sexual violence. And in the case of violence, it will be easier to report it. In the first sexual experience, but also in adult life, it is important to understand that no always means no, and that we always have the right to ask our partners to stop if we do not feel comfortable. It is okay to say no, even if we say yes at first. Sometimes we think that we want something or that we are ready for something, so that only when we start doing it, we realize that we do not like it and that we are not ready. What we can do is educate parents about the importance of answering about sexuality. The child will conclude that mom and dad don't know this, so they will look for the answers elsewhere. And that answer will often be wrong. Such wrong answers can turn a person into a potential victim of sexual violence, all due to lack of education about sexuality, which raises awareness of notion of bodily autonomy. But with adequate education, we empower families, individuals, and women to take active roles in their lives. Therefore, please, we must start making changes at the root. Let's teach parents to protect and educate their children about their bodies in a timely manner, and that it's okay to say no. But with that, which is more important to teach parents, to teach their male children, it's okay if someone rejects them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fatma, for your insightful intervention and for emphasizing the importance of leaving no one behind and addressing exclusion. I think that it was really, I just want to flag something really important that you just mentioned, which is that there is a need of comprehensive sexuality education. And you mentioned that it is very important that parents also receive this type of education. And I think that that is very relevant because As a part of a youth-led organization, most of the times we hear that comprehensive sexuality education should be only oriented to young people, like girls, adolescents, and young women. And the reality is that young people are more open to receive information, are more open to explore different ways of doing things. And it is very important that this education is also provided to parents, to educators, to trainers, to politicians, and to all the adults that are out there in decision-making spaces. I would like now to introduce Catarina Furtado, UNFPA's Goodwill Ambassador and TV reporter. Catarina, in the context of the TV documentaries that you have produced on migrants and refugees, namely with women and girls in different parts of the world, what situations should the international community be aware of, and what examples of resilience and transformational leadership would you like to share with us?
Thank you, dear Eunice. First, I have to say that it is a great pleasure to work with UNFPA family for 20 years already. And I have to say thank you for your wonderful work all around the world. And then I have to say that nothing is more transformative for women and girls than having the power to choose. COVID-19 has shown us that women's progress is easily set back, but it's also shown us the rule of resilience and women leadership. As UNFPA Goodwill Ambassador, TV reporter, activist, writer, mother, and woman, I've witnessed it thousands of times. I've witnessed it, I seen it in the eyes, and I heard it in the words of many women and girls. I saw the cry for help, but most important, I saw the power, the strength to be the master of their own destinies, using their agency to demand and the service they want and they need. Their leadership shows us that they are really the agents of change. For example, in the world's biggest refugee camp, Kutupalong in Bangladesh, I have witnessed the plight of Rohingya people through the eyes of Asina, a pregnant child bride. I met her in one of the women-friendly spaces run by UNFPA, where she was receiving information on family planning, pregnancy, and safe delivery that she had never had access to. Asina was now sharing it with other girls, advocating for them to postpone marriage and plan their pregnancies so they could stay in school. In Guinea-Bissau, for example, with Fatoumata, I saw the current and future impact of FGM on the lives of girls and women whose bodily autonomy and integrity had been denied by this harmful practice. And in Mozambique, I was struck by how child marriage was taking girls out of school, accelerating early pregnancy, and increasing the prevalence of many morbidities in teenage girls, but also how it multiplies the different forms of gender-based violence. In Uganda, Kathy, a wonderful woman, inspired me with her work empowering refugee girls who had survived sexual violence. And I also had conversations with child soldiers used as human shields. And in Colombia, I interview many refugee women like Joanna, for example, that share episodes of rape where their body was used as a weapon of war. But I also realize, and this is important, the steps she takes with other women to recover the dignity that armed conflict and extreme poverty had put on hold. All these stories, some of us only read in books or in well-drafted reports, are about real people whose pains and fears, hopes and dreams are just like mine, like yours. I have learned that unless girls and women have access to education, to sexual and reproductive health and rights services, to make their own choices, unless they have bodily autonomy and can make the basic decisions about their bodies, such as whether to have sexual relations or not, to use contraception or not, to use menstrual hygiene products or go to school, their agency and leadership will never be a reality. Bodily autonomy is a right, a first right for women and girls. This is the leadership we need now, more than ever. And it's the right thing to do to save the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katarina, for sharing your experience and your work. It is, and I think that you touch upon something that is very important, which is the power of girls, adolescents, and young women empowering other girls, adolescents, and young women. I think that that is vital, and the Youth Coalition has focused a lot on building the capacity of other young people and other young leaders around the world, because we believe that that is the best way in improving things.
Yeah, it's the leadership, it's the magic.
Yes, and also because girls, adolescents, and young women are very creative into coming up with solutions for current situations and for the current stage of things. So thank you very much for flagging that. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Salma Nims, Secretary General of the National Commission for Women in Jordan. Salma, you are a vocal advocate for women's rights. What are some of the main challenges that women face in exercising their bodily autonomy, and what strategies have you and the Commission found to address them?
Well, a lot to answer in 3 minutes, but thank you so much for this opportunity. Well, we have multi-layered areas of challenges, and some of them have been mentioned by some of the speakers, but it is all complicated by the fact that we have religion and traditions affecting how the society look and how even the legal system look at the rights of women to their bodies. So we will see that in areas of education to protect them from sexual violence, we still have a lot of challenges because we cannot have young men and women accessing this education. So that's one area, and it is because it is seen that if we give them this education, it's about giving them sexual freedom, which is against our religious or our society. Then we come to the issue of access to SRHR. Again, there are areas in that which are related to poverty, but we have a universal system that is accessible to all Jordanians. But at the same time, it is only access to married women. So we find that women who are not married will not get any services relating to their even any other sexual or medical needs, early detection of any different, not only related to her sexual life, but even other ovary cancer, breast cancer, all of these things cannot be accessed because it is not given to them by law unless they go with a parent. Then it becomes more complex because in Jordan, they still allow marriage under the age of 18. So her life is actually, she's forced to marriage, but at the same time, she cannot access these services unless she has a husband who is over 18 or her family coming to help her. And of course, many of those women are subjected to being pressured to get pregnant as early as the first month of getting marriage. Then there is the issue of access to the right of having abortion. Women who are victims of rape today, they still don't have access to kids, early kids, and still abortion is illegal in Jordan unless small exceptions. And then of course, even not only in rape, if it's a relation outside marriage, she is unable to have the abortion, she's unable to adopt, she cannot keep the child. So it is really a more complex than we think. And then the issue of course, women with disabilities that was mentioned, they are still subjected, they don't have even, it's more complicated to have access. Women in Jordan still cannot say no to their husbands to have in terms of sex. So there is no such thing as marriage rape. And of course, still 14% of women, even if they want married and they want access to the contraceptives, they are unable to access them. And many of those decisions are controlled by the husband. So it is still very complicated. The issue is quite complicated. And of course, as at a political level, there is a decision to give that right. We have already, the Higher Population Council in Jordan developed a strategy. We have now started advocating within our national strategy for women. Finally, for the first time in history, we have stated access to sexual and reproductive health rights to women and girls. So this is something now we have to see it moving forward. But there is a very important project that was implemented by UNFPA in Jordan with YPEER, with the National Center for Culture and Art, which is using theater-based techniques, which is under the guides, the guidebook of the UNFPA. It was translated to Arabic, and it's been implemented in the region. And I think this is something that can be scaled up, because we're talking about generation equality today. I think the youth are our way of making the change. We are demanding amendments to legislations. We are asking for more services and access to services. We are demanding services and, of course, ending child marriage. But with the youth, and I think with more work done with the youth, I think we will see change that is instilled within the society, and then we are able to make more changes at the legislative and implementation level. Thank you.
Wow, that was very insightful. Thank you very much for all the examples that you have provided. And I think that it is very relevant to touch upon two things that you just said. The first one is recognizing the agency of girls and young women to make decisions and to be able to decide by themselves and to be able to access by themselves to all of these health services that they need. And the other one is the fact that you mentioned around comprehensive sexuality education and how it is very needed that not only girls and women receive this education, but also men in society, because we believe that the transformation has to come from society. There is no better way of providing or of allowing women to make decisions by themselves than to actually educate and transform the society and the systems that we're living on right now. So thank you very much for those insights. And now I want to turn the floor to Gabriela Rodriguez, Director of the National Population Council in Mexico, y mi paisana también. So Gabriela, welcome. And I want to ask you, Mexico is a co-host of the Generation Equality Forum and an important initiative to support gender equality, including women's bodily autonomy for SRHR. Can you tell us why this leadership role was so important for you?
Buenos días, saludos a todas. Mi intervención es en español. Pues mira, no solo para mí, sino el propio país, el gobierno, ha puesto un énfasis muy fuerte en los derechos sexuales y reproductivos. De hecho, son centrales y los ubicamos así como para alcanzar la igualdad sustantiva. En nuestro país se ha acogido este foro de Generación Igualdad con gran beneplácito para continuar con la tradición expansionista de la agenda de género que arrancó desde el 1975 en lo que fue la primera conferencia internacional de la mujer realizada aquí en la Ciudad de México. Los marcos normativos nacionales, internacionales que han fortalecido en las últimas décadas aquí en México se han enfocado para que las mujeres tengan los mismos derechos, pero desde luego hoy necesitamos una política más integral que promueva lo que yo llamo un cambio cultural a través de la educación sexual integral y con perspectiva de género en las aulas escolares, un tema al que yo he dedicado prácticamente 40 años de mi vida, primero en las organizaciones civiles, ahora desde el gobierno, ¿no? Es importante que esta educación esté en todos los niveles educativos, esté en los medios de comunicación digitales, tradicionales y digitales, y también en los programas comunitarios, ¿no? Porque hay barreras económicas, étnicas, culturales que perpetúan las brechas de desigualdad en mi país e impiden que se limite y limitan el ejercicio de los derechos. En este país la violencia de género es muy lamentable las tasas que presenta, ¿no? En todas sus modalidades. Específicamente vamos a hablar directamente que a veces la violencia sexual es producto de embarazos en niñas menores de 15, un tema que al cual nos estamos enfocando de manera especial. La interrupción del embarazo es un derecho en todo el territorio mexicano cuando es producto de violación sexual. Y para mayores de 12 años no necesitan aprobación de sus papás, de sus padres o tutores, ¿no? Y solamente en 2 entidades el aborto está despenalizado por decisión de la mujer. Hemos renovado nuestro compromiso entre gobierno federal y gobiernos locales, pero también con las organizaciones de la sociedad civil, con el sector privado, con la academia, tal como lo plantea la Agenda 2030, el rol de los organismos internacionales, especialmente del Fondo de Población de las Naciones Unidas ha sido clave. Pero es preciso seguir apelando al Estado laico para eliminar los prejuicios y reconocer que todas las personas, sin importar sus creencias, ¿no?, ni otras condiciones, deben y pueden ejercer una vida sexual y productiva plena. México tiene una tradición de más de 170 años de Estado laico, ¿no? Y aún así tenemos que seguir apelando. Como autoridades nos toca fortalecer la autonomía de todas las mujeres para la realización personal, para que la realización personal de las mujeres no sea un lujo de clase. Es preciso abandonar las prácticas machistas y patriarcales que han lacerado tanto a nuestra sociedad para que toda maternidad sea oportuna y voluntaria. El mensaje es fuerte y claro. La maternidad será elegida o no será. Desde diferentes aristas e instituciones estamos coordinando ejes de acción y generando propuestas para impulsar la autonomía física, económica y política de las mujeres. Felicito al Fondo de Población y a todo su equipo por el esfuerzo realizado en torno a este tema tan nodal y tan imprescindible para garantizar la autonomía de las mujeres. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Gabriela, for your intervention. And I think that it is very critical to talk about how it's not only about having laws and having policies that allow women to decide on their on their bodies, but it is also very important to fund governmental services so that all women can access this, because sometimes we have found evidence that especially for young women living in poverty in Mexico, sometimes contraception and abortion is not enough, and they also need a part of bodily autonomy is also to allow them to decide whether they want to have children and I think that it is very important that we think about how the government and society is supporting women living in poverty who want to be mothers, and that they also have the option of being mothers even though they have less resources than other people. So that is very important for us as young women. And I have talked about this a lot with many activists in Mexico. So thank you so much for that intervention. And now I want to turn to Rayatu Turay, founder of the Amazonian Initiative movement in Sierra Leone. Rayatu, for a long time, development partners and governments have worked to promote women's and girls' rights, yet change is slow. What is needed for women and girls to finally achieve their bodily autonomy? And welcome. Rayatu? Okay, I don't see her. So I'm going to move I'm going to give the floor to Micheline, who is the executive director of the Pananeturi Initiative for Women's Welfare in Burkina Faso.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to ask.
Merci pour moi de me retrouver ce matin à cet espace.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask you, Micheline, what are some ways in which your organization addresses the barriers that women face in being able to make their own decisions about sexual and reproductive health and rights?
Merci pour cette question. Il faut dire que les problèmes de santé liés à la sexualité au niveau du Burkina représentent une grande problématique très importante de par leur prévalence et de leur diversité. Nous pouvons citer, entre autres, les nouveaux cas d'infection liés au VIH et également les grossesses non désirées, parmi les jeunes filles principalement, et aussi les cas de mutilation génitale féminine toujours reportés clandestinement. Et nous apprécions fortement l'engagement de l'État avec l'adoption de mesures pour l'accès à la gratuité de la prévention et de la planification familiale en lien avec la santé sexuelle et reproductive. Toutes ces mesures concourent à améliorer la santé sexuelle, mais paradoxalement, les grossesses non désirées sont recrudescentes et les filles font face à des handicaps qui freinent fortement leur accès à ces services de planification familiale. Et au niveau de l'IPBF, organisation féministe qui travaille en promotion du leadership des jeunes filles et des jeunes femmes, nous mettons un point très important sur le développement du leadership des filles. Le système patriarcal et l'éducation que nous recevons constituent un handicap à l'éclosion, je dirais, des jeunes filles et des jeunes femmes dans leur leadership, à être des leaders de leur vie et adopter des comportements responsables, opérer des choix judicieux qui concernent leur avenir. Et cette problématique est traitée au niveau de l'IPBF par la mise en place de clubs de leadership. Les clubs de leadership, nous faisons la promotion de l'éducation par les pairs. Le club de leadership est renforcé par des outils d'apprentissage que nous avons développés et que les filles utilisent pour renforcer leur leadership. Nous accompagnons également par le plaidoyer en faveur du changement de contexte afin que les stéréotypes, de construire les stéréotypes de genre et favoriser l'apprentissage, le développement du leadership des jeunes filles dans notre contexte. Nous pensons que pour développer la santé sexuelle et reproductive, il faut un engagement des stratégies dans nos pays afin d'accompagner la population dans leur vie sexuelle et reproductive à travers la définition libre de leur sexualité, à définir les choix, opérer des choix judicieux, intégrité corporelle, respect de la vie privée et l'autonomie, bien sûr, à disposer de son corps. Il faut dire que ces enjeux sont toujours présents dans notre contexte et en faveur du travail qui est réalisé par les organisations féminines et notamment l'accompagnement que IPBF réalise auprès des jeunes filles. Nous observons beaucoup d'améliorations, mais également des défis toujours en lien avec le développement de ce leadership en faveur des jeunes filles et des jeunes femmes. Nous pensons que l'État peut faire beaucoup à travers le plaidoyer, le changement de comportement, mais aussi l'accompagnement par l'adoption de mesures en faveur de la création d'espaces, du respect des droits sexuels et reproductifs. Et nous saisissons cet espace pour interpeller l'État burkinabé qui est co-leader de la coalition DSSR et autonomie corporelle au Forum Génération Égalité, afin que les besoins spécifiques des jeunes filles et des jeunes femmes soient pris en compte et que des dispositions soient prises pour respecter leur vie sexuelle, leur choix sexuel et leur autonomie corporelle. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much for your insights. And I really believe that it is very true what you just said about like providing or like having and improving these spaces, supporting women-led spaces so that women can share their experiences and they can share support and they can build really strong networks. I have seen this and I have experienced it myself, and I truly believe that that is a very important step towards bodily autonomy of young women. And now I want to turn to, I see that our colleague Raya Tuturay is here, and she's the founder of the Amazonian Initiative movement in Sierra Leone. So now I want to give the floor to you, and I want to ask you, for a long time, development partners and governments have worked to promote women's and girls' rights, yet changes is slow. What is needed for women and girls to finally achieve their bodily autonomy? Rayatu, can you hear me? You're muted. Just a second, please, because we cannot hear you. You are muted. I don't know if someone can help me to unmute Rayatu. Okay, I'm gonna have to move on to the next panelist because we apparently have some. Okay, now you're unmuted. Welcome, Rayatu.
Hello.
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 We can hear you. Yes, we can hear you.
thank you very much for creating the platform. Sierra Leone, as a country, according to statistics, Sierra Leone, we have the high illiteracy rate, of which is 35.1%. And women making 51% of the Sierra Leone population make a greater number of the illiterate population in the country. And issues of teenage pregnancy, early child marriage, FGM, female genital mutilation, and gender-based violences, you can see the reason why they are prevalent in our country. Because looking at the educational level of our women population is too small. And even in our representative in parliament, women have only 12.3%. And the population of women that are mutilated are 90%. This tells us that the country, everybody focuses on traditional practices that subdue women. That's why we have the percentage of female genital mutilation in this country still too high. And you know, we actually have a very controversial discussion on the issue of how we can end FGM. When I listen to different presenters, they talk about allowing women to make a decision. And so as a country, this is where some people want to take a way to hide under allowing our women to make a decision after the age of 12 to have FGM performed on them. So the controversy here is WHO, which is known as a World Health Organization, the UN and everybody has agreed that FGM should be abolished. The consequences of FGM, whether it's age of consent or not, will never change. They remain the same. So as a country, we should move our discussion from an age of consent, of which UNFPA is also key in helping to do that. Move the discussion from an age of consent to have on wherein every woman will have full protection of their body to remain intact, not to remove any part because people think tradition demands it. And so we want to say our NGOs, our donors, our local partners, the government have failing to be successful because, one, when you look into the population of the country, rural people, where you have more women, make a greater number. And these women are not educated. These people are not educated. Women in Sierra Leone have tried so hard in lobbying to make sure laws are passed for Sexual Offences Act. They make sure that the Gender Acts are passed, the Child Rights Acts are passed. But those people who are affected directly by these issues are not involved in what is happening. And all this work focuses on urban towns, leaving the people who really need the information. So you see there is a kind of a gap between what people do in urban areas and what is obtaining in rural communities. So even though there is a sexual offences path through lobbying, through influence, through progress, but when you go to rural communities, this practice are still continuing in huge numbers. And you find out that because people still give preference to tradition, women tradition, which is actually the source of why women are still down in the bottom in Sierra Leone, you find it difficult for women to progress. So we think we must change the way we intervene in moving forward issues of women if we want to be able to achieve SDG 5. That is, bring women in rural communities to be part of whatever change you want to see. So, how do you work with rural communities where you want to make sure education, you say you want quality education, remove the shrines that people have given so much importance to. women value tradition than education. And so if you bring a school and you have a traditional practice, in there that is happening, people will not pay attention to education. So we will come back by having a low number of women educated, and you find it difficult for women to take over leadership roles, for women to take over decisions over their bodies, because they are unaware. And so we think, as I say, we must change the approach. The percentages we have in the country are very much clear. In education, it's too low for women. In child marriage, it's too high. In FGM, traditional practices, is too high. It shows the level of importance. And again, we say present and past governments, political, are concerned about power. So the fear of losing political power and status has kept women leaders not to speak against the practice of FGM. And so instead, they think it's having a strategy that compromises on the age of consent. So we think we should, as a country, look at this issue with a global eye. Globally, it is wrong to mutilate a woman or a girl for whatever reason, if it is not health. And we say, we must make sure, even if it has to cost you your power, you take an action to protect women and girls from going to harmful traditional practices. And this is why we think development partners should focus on aligning their project to change of social norms. It is and only when we accepted to work in changing social norms, you tag with every project, that we will be able to achieve what we want about women bodily autonomy and then getting women in leadership positions as we want them. So we say change norms, add value to education, allow women to get education and make proper decision for the development of the nation. Thank you. For sure.
Thank you very much. I think that it is very relevant what you just said. There is, and I think that this happens also in my context, and I can also like speak about like what's happening in Mexico. And it is very clear that women in rural areas are being left behind, and that there is a need of supporting women's collectives in those areas and supporting other type of community services in those areas. And also, when you talk about changing the norms of society, I really feel that that is very important, especially for young people. You know that what we say when we are advocating for contraception and abortion and bodily autonomy in Latin America, the feminist movement says comprehensive sexuality education to decide, contraceptions to not get pregnant, and safe abortion not to die. And the reality is that young people want comprehensive sexuality education to discover contraceptives, to enjoy, and abortion to decide. And I think that there is like a really big difference between what young people are needing and the changes in norms that are needed for young people and the perspective of adults. So that's one of the comments that I want to say. And thank you very much for your intervention. It was really, really interesting. And now I would like to introduce Nayeli Yobal, Regional and Sectoral Coordinator, Director of the National Youth Institute of Mexico. Nayeli, young women around the world are standing up to patriarchy in many ways. Through your experience, what is that movement demanding, and how does bodily autonomy connect to that? Welcome.
Muchas gracias, Eunice. Buenos días a todas y a todos. Y bueno, pues es una de las preguntas más interesantes que me han hecho los últimos días. Además me emociona mucho porque justamente actualmente estoy trabajando en el Instituto Mexicano de la Juventud, pero anteriormente estuve mucho tiempo en los movimientos feministas de jóvenes. Yo creo que lo dices bien en la pregunta. Hay un enfrentamiento directo al patriarcado y ya no solo se está padeciendo, sino que justo las mujeres jóvenes están en un grito de guerra contra él. Y en esta lucha de constante contra el patriarcado, la autonomía corporal es central, porque nuestros cuerpos son el primer espacio, el primer territorio de toma de decisiones, pero también desafortunadamente suele ser el motín de la guerra. Y ahí es donde se vuelve indispensable entender que si no tenemos las condiciones y el respeto para tomar esas decisiones sobre nuestros cuerpos, va a ser muy complicado avanzar con el empoderamiento y con la autonomía en otros ámbitos como el político. Quiero decir también que esta lucha, esta guerra no es exclusiva de las mujeres jóvenes. Creo que las mujeres de distintas generaciones históricamente hemos tomado las calles, las plazas públicas para hacer oír nuestras voces. Sin embargo, sí creo que los últimos 5 años hemos visto a cada vez más y más mujeres jóvenes. Y quiero aclarar que no es que estén apareciendo recientemente en estos últimos 5 años, sino es que ahora hay muchas más y hay muchas más herramientas como las redes sociales que han potenciado al movimiento y que le han dado mucha visibilidad. Pues ese hartazgo, esa rabia que además es justa por todo lo que acabo de decir, porque pues han sido décadas de sufrimiento y de padecimiento del patriarcado, pues viene mucho por toda la violencia machista, en especial por el feminicidio que nos ha hecho con múltiples consignas, pues eso, tomar los espacios públicos. Hemos visto consignas como ni una menos, no estamos todas, vivas las queremos, ya basta, no es no, una consigna tan simple y tan vigente. Y bueno, ahora también se ha sumado la absoluta convicción de que no estamos solas. Y hay una consigna que a mí me encanta, la de juntas, libres y sin miedo, porque creo que pues está claro que necesitamos seguir avanzando así, juntas y sin miedo. Y esto nos da muchas oportunidades de vencer al patriarcado, porque también se ha dicho, no es que se va a caer, es que lo vamos a tirar, pues, ¿no? Y estas manifestaciones masivas no tienen precedente, no solo por las diversas voces de las mujeres y de distintas clases sociales y diversidades, sino por su creatividad y por la reivindicación de la lucha. Y es aquí donde justo suena lo que ellas quieren, ¿no? Creo que si escuchamos con claridad las consignas, podemos identificar que lo que se está pidiendo es lo mismo que se demanda quizá desde hace décadas. Y es que el hecho de ser mujer no implica una desventaja que se manifiesta desde el cuerpo, desde el no poder decidir cuándo, con quién y cómo nos relacionamos, hasta lo social. Demandan también igualdad, justicia y libertad. Igualdad de oportunidades, justicia para quienes han sido víctimas de violencias, autonomía corporal, que no solo implica el acceso a métodos anticonceptivos, sino implica el derecho a decidir sobre sus cuerpos sin que eso ponga en riesgo sus vidas o su libertad. Implica el derecho también al placer. Creo que es una de las cosas que hemos estado como dejando de lado porque nos enfocamos mucho en la vida reproductiva, pero no en la vida sexual y no en el derecho a ejercerla de forma placentera y segura. Es también una exigencia de libertad para sentirse seguras al caminar, para sentirnos seguras al caminar, para saber que podemos vestirnos como se nos dé la gana sin que eso implique que alguien piense que es una provocación o la justificación de alguna violencia machista. Porque en tiempos recientes nos lo dijeron también de forma muy clara y muy contundente. La culpa no era mía, ni dónde estaba, ni cómo vestía. Hoy más que nunca nos toca al resto escuchar de verdad. Si solo ponemos atención a las consignas, sabremos de fondo qué están exigiendo. Porque también si no logramos que la igualdad, la libertad y la justicia llegue a todas las mujeres, estamos fallando como sociedad, como Estado y yo me atrevería a decir que como humanidad. Ya no es suficiente a estas alturas con reconocer que el machismo existe y que ha existido por siglos, sino es imprescindible actuar y como gobierno justo también nos toca eso. Yo celebro que en México estamos haciendo también grandes cosas por posicionar el reconocimiento de los jóvenes como sujetos de derechos en general y nos hace falta también seguir escuchando y tomar nota de estas consignas que no son más que la simple exigencia de que seamos respetadas y que nuestros derechos sean garantizados a pesar de ser mujeres. Y eso es muy fuerte decirlo, pero es tan simple como ese reconocimiento. Y bueno, quisiera hablar mucho más, pero los tiempos siempre son muy perversos. Muchas gracias, Eunice.
Muchas gracias, Nayeli. And I think that, well, thank you very much for your inputs. I think that it is very relevant what you just said. especially the part, and I think that it is especially relevant for this panel because we're talking about what kind of leadership is needed to accomplish bodily autonomy. And you said something that is very important for young people, that is also like focusing on pleasure, like a comprehensive sexuality education that is not focused only in the biological aspect of reproduction, but also that approaches the needs of young people and women around the world in a holistic way. And I just had a discussion with adolescents, and they have such a strong agenda around issues such as mental health as well, gender identities, sexual orientation, and all of that is really needed to end discrimination and to fight the systems of oppression such as ableism, racism, classism, etc. So thank you very much. I think that that is very relevant. And now I want to turn the microphone to Rashana Sonar. Rashana is a child marriage survivor and an advocate based in Nepal. So Rashana, welcome to this panel. And I want to ask you, as a survivor of child marriage and as a leader in your community, how has your leadership and experience helped change the harmful social norms so that women and girls have more control of their bodily integrity, including avoiding child marriage? Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. Namaste, I am Rasna Sunar, human rights activist and fighting to end child marriage, violence against women and girls in Nepal. I started my campaign back in 2013 when it connected with my own story. When I was 15, I was forced to marry off with a guy that I have never met. Without my involvement in the decision making of my own wedding, I was asked to get ready to become a bride, which was not acceptable for me because I wasn't ready. My body wasn't ready to become a bride and be sexually active and have children instantly I get married. So I said no to child marriage and escaped from that harmful practice. So I realized the power of saying no. And I realized there are so many girls next door, my peer friends, and even younger age of like my sisters are getting the same risk of child marriage and they're exposed to domestic violence, rape, and having children in such a young age leads to them further consequences. Having children in early age can lead to the risk of having malnutrition, child mortality, or relating to their uterus prolapsed. All those problems they were being facing. So I saw the need of talking, the need of having dialogues with them. I started my journey having dialogue with 25 girls, collecting my peer friends and talking to them about how we can end this harmful practice of child marriage. Because worldwide, 650 million girls get married before they turn 18. And in Nepal, there is 37% of child marriage still exists, which means 4 girls out of 10 get forcibly child married and they are exposed to domestic violence. And child marriage actually gives free license to those Bloom family to use the girls' labor work. The girls are expected as a child labor, but they work all day long without any allowances or without any of their work. So it is not giving them their access of bodily autonomy. In Nepal, there is in the constitution, it says the bodily autonomy rights are conserved, but lack of implementation, girls and women are not having that power to use their rights of freedom or making decision about their own bodies or rights of their decisions of having children. Because we come from a society where women are not asked, we are treated as second citizens. After the child marries, the girl turned into a woman overnight. Even the age is 15 or 16, but the society sees girls as a woman and they expect all the maturity from that girl. who is still a girl child, and the girl child cannot raise children with good parenting skills, which leads to the further problems as poverty, lack of education, because they can't get higher education, and without education they can't make good job or having financially empowerment. So this creates the whole cycle. Physically, socially, emotionally, they are vulnerable, and they don't have power to use their bodily autonomy because they are completely dependent on their husband's family, because they don't make any money to feed their belly or to raise their children. So they are only expected to do household chores or only the domestic work, which doesn't make any financial profit for them. Therefore, I was very against of child marriage, and I decided to have a campaign, door-to-door campaign, and raise awareness against of these harmful practices and save young girls to become child bride and keep them at school, providing scholarship opportunity to them so they can go to school and stay until they can live their life independently. So since 2013, we have been raising awareness against of this child marriage, and we have stopped more than 1,000 child marriage by raising awareness and having orientation, door-to-door events, and showing drama and stage drama, and also involving their parents and educating them that saying to a mother, if you stop your girl's child married, then you are stopping her from living the same life like you do, because you were not having your rights and you are being completely dependent with your husband. So do you still want your daughter to face the same cycle as you do? Then the young mothers also raise their voice that they will fight for their daughters and they will raise their daughters, educate their daughters, and they want to see their bright future. That's the journey we are having, and it's making impact. And compared to earlier days, we can see girls in school, and our activism work is making awareness and raising young girls to be socially, emotionally empowered and say no to child marriage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for what you shared with us and for your courage, leadership, and your time. I think that you said many things that are crucial for this panel. And what you just mentioned also stressed the need of creating community resources so that women and like girls and adolescents can actually access different type of services, information, and support so that they can actually be able to say no, because sometimes we think that young women they don't say no because they can't say no, but it's also like many other circumstances around them, such as economical, like health, like the access to different services. And I think that what you just said is really, really relevant for this. Thank you very much. And it was a pleasure to hear from you. And well, just to go a little bit around like the kind of leadership that we need to accomplish bodily autonomy, I would like to ask all our panelists, what support do you need in your leadership role towards advocating for bodily autonomy and women's sexual and reproductive health and rights? I would like to ask Fatma first.
Thank you. Oh, a second to start video. Well, what we definitely need is systemic support that is lacking in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Due to the lack of systemic support, we must look for a way out in an international community that is sufficiently aware to see the problems. Therefore, I need strong partners who will work with me on issues of common interest. In addition, of course, additional fund and grant opportunities are needed to be able to adequately address the problems one by one. we need to be aware that change does not happen overnight, but with work and effort we put in, the generation to come should not have the problems that we have faced and still face today. I hope that the country will recognize the importance of supporting marginalized people and all others. But until that happens, we need support so that all those women who are invisible would not be forgotten. Let everyone's life be worth of living, and it is our responsibility to contribute in part to that.
Thank you very much. I would like to hear now from Katarina. What support do you need in your leadership role towards advocating for bodily autonomy and women's sexual and reproductive health and rights? And I just want to remind our panelists that they have 2 minutes to respond to this question.
I'll try in 2 minutes. Thank you, Eunice. I humbly have to say that I have claimed and crafted my seat here on the table. I choose to work my privileges in order to be part of the solution. We have to be part of the solution. I first started to listen to the girls, and girls and women, and then assisting them, providing them with a platform so their voices and not my voice could be heard and amplified. Through my documentaries, my books, conferences, school visits, my CSO, and the suggestions that I always give to the press. This is important to say to the press, to listen to the girls and to the women. I have granted scholarships and counseling programs so they could realize their potential and be actors of the change. I have acknowledged and highlighted their own agency. I've been to the field to get a first-hand recount of their stories, and I've broadcasted their life experiences, hopes, and viewpoints to big audiences and TV. I've campaigned with women and men, for SRHR, for UNFPA mission, for women and girls opportunities and choices with all the relevant stakeholders, civil society, organizations, academics, decision makers, members of parliament, and government. These women and girls have their own claims, and we listen to this all morning. And they must know the legal framework and what they need to take control of their bodies to make informed and life-changing decisions. As far as what I need, I would say information and disaggregated data on the broad picture of sexual and reproductive health and rights without jargons to be easily perceived by the different press and different social actors, including political power and also young people. And of course, UNFPA data, expertise, and community-based programs for increasing advocacy and joint action. I would also like that UNFPA and all of you were able to listen and share the documentaries of all the girls and women with their voices and testimony that I shoot during these last 20 years in different countries with humanitarian and development levels in order to better understand and amplify the need and impact to achieve SRHR, gender equality, and rights for all. Let's share the common cause, the dignity and autonomy of all women and girls without any discrimination, without leaving anyone behind. Thank you all.
Thank you very much for your remarks and for allowing young people to talk and to open the space for them to share their insights. Thank you very much. And I would like to now turn to Salma.
Thank you. Maybe I agree with Katrina. You know, we feel that some of us here own their voices, and we've raised our voices against really challenging context. But also we need to hear that. I agree on the fact that we need to give the younger women their voices, and it's very difficult in contexts like our context. I think that the women movement is facing a pushback, and it's facing hate speech, it's facing demonization, And this is like shrinking the civic space, and the shrinking of a civic space and the delegitimization of the women movement is affecting its ability to raise these voices and to show that this is a basic human right, that if it is not given, it's not only about, especially in contexts like ours, it's not only about having a life with free sexual freedom, it's about basic dignity. We still have women who are women with disabilities, for example. This issue in Jordan is still not tackled enough. They're suffering from hysterectomy because of for example, the problem that we're connecting the honor of the family to their bodies, but actually it's an act of abusing them and being actually victimized by their families because they are with disabilities, especially those with mental disability. So it's a way for men to gain control over them without facing the consequences. So we need to give the women movement and younger women their voices. And this is not something that I would ask for as a leader. We need to push the governments not to be scared off by these voices, and that they watch us being attacked, demonized on social media, hate speech against us, and they don't see that this is something that is affecting achieving real rights, human rights for women. So I think this is something that we need to also push for.
Thank you very much. Gabriela?
Fíjate que pienso que es muy importante ver este tema como un tema de relaciones de poder y de cambio de mentalidades. Para mí ahí es donde, no tanto de cambios legales, probablemente porque en México tenemos un marco legal muy robusto, entonces hay que sacar las leyes a la calle. Tenemos que verlo como relaciones de poder. Mientras no invirtamos en las niñas y adolescentes para que lleguen al nivel medio, superior y superior. Este país está invirtiendo ahorita mucho, millones de becas para que no dejen la escuela. Involucrar mujeres en los más altos puestos de poder, que también ahí por ahí va también mucho avance en México en la paridad. Pero lo que hemos hecho menos es en verlo como un cambio cultural, como un cambio de mentalidades. Eso se ha hecho mucho menos, se ha hecho más en lo legal, más, ¿no? Si no hacemos un cambio de las nuevas generaciones. Y yo estoy de acuerdo que hay que trabajar con mamás y papás y obviamente y con docentes y con... Sí, pero no, ningún cambio grande cultural empieza por los adultos, con su pena, con la pena. El cambio lo hacen las juventudes y las nuevas generaciones. Entonces sí, necesitamos sensibilizar a los directores de las escuelas para que nos dejen hacer una educación sexual plena en las escuelas, desde el kinder y hasta la universidad. Pero además, primero, y también que puedan empoderar, hay factor estructural, que las niñas, adolescentes de las áreas rurales, indígenas, tengan acceso al nivel medio superior, por lo menos. La mitad en este país no va al nivel medio superior, el promedio es de 9 grados. Entonces, fortalecer eso y además verlo como ese cambio cultural, es cambio de las ideas, de las niñas, las adolescentes y los adolescentes, a una masculinidad positiva desde el kinder, desde el preescolar. Tenemos que trabajar y cambiar esas ideas. Y siento que no se ha visto, por lo menos en mi país, el esfuerzo ha sido mucho cambios legales, pero terminan siendo cambios formales que no transforman la vida diaria en un aula escolar y en un centro de salud, ahí, ¿no? Donde las directoras de las escuelas estén vinculadas con el centro de salud, ¿no? Con los derechos para denunciar abuso y violencia sexual, ¿no? Esto es algo en el que estamos haciendo un esfuerzo enorme. Nuestra campaña se llama Yo decido mi futuro, la campaña de adolescentes, y va exactamente a la autonomía, a formar niñas y mujeres autónomas.
Muchas gracias. Now I want to pass the microphone to Rayatu.
Yes, solutions to address this issue here. One, we should make sure UNFPA and all UN agencies working in Sierra Leone work towards eradicating FGM rather than age of consent. Internationally, it's eradication. 2, let's see how we lobby our political parties to include this topic in their manifestos whenever they want to run for political offices. It must be included to show that they are actually committed. 3, we must make sure the media, as we are working with global media campaign and purposeful in propagating the campaign against FGM, we must make sure we support and fund campaign on media, train more media people to get involved in the fight. And then we must make sure we disband the Sowe Council. You know, it saddens you to know that it is only in Sierra Leone where you have a whole government accepting Sowe to be a registered institution. When you cannot see this with the men's secret society, we don't have a power council, we don't have a wounded council, but because the Bondo society where FGM is practiced is so politicized, they have formed themselves into a Sowe council, working with the government, and the government is asking them to work together to make policies. How can somebody who is a perpetrator work to make a policy that will protect others? That's why we are still fighting on this controversy of age of consent. And then we want to see how we can host a national event. UNFPA and UN agencies have sponsored events in other countries, but they've failed to do that in Sierra Leone. Let's see how we sponsor a national event in opening this discussion further. Again, let's see how UNFPA and other organizations will include and partner with local organizations to make sure we work with rural communities and talk about harmful traditional practices to make sure women are safe. And finally, I say, let us stop to support that policy on age of consent, because it is not in the interest to fight to end FGM. It is a way for politicians. The past government started it. We stood against it and we did not allow it. And this government is still working on a policy, and they want to take this document to parliament only to protect girls. And we know in our country, children don't have a decision, even when you are age 40. As long as you are under the auspices of your family, you don't have a decision. So for UN agencies and other partners to support a policy like that is undermining the entire international community process of eradication of FGM. So we are saying, let us all work together in protecting women and girls, work with local partners who know the tradition and custom, who have no fear of losing power or not, so that we will be able to protect women and girls.
Thank you very much. And now I want to pass the word to Micheline.
Merci beaucoup. Merci. Je pense que pour la liberté à disposer de son corps et en faveur des droits des femmes en matière de santé sexuelle et reproductive, au niveau du Burkina, nous avons, et en Afrique de l'Ouest francophone également, la mise en réseau des organisations afin d'accroître l'impact de nos actions. Et la mise en réseau facilite et impacte positivement sur l'organisation, la définition d'une thématique commune et l'harmonisation des objectifs et des actions en faveur de la santé sexuelle et reproductive des jeunes et des femmes. Le financement et le financement et le soutien technique aux organisations et mouvements féministes en Afrique qui sont très actifs sur le terrain et qui maîtrisent aussi la thématique. Je citerai en exemple le réseau des jeunes féministes ouest-africains, et ce réseau travaille en faveur principalement des droits des filles et des femmes, mais aussi à l'occasion du Forum Génération Égalité met un accent particulier sur l'accès à la santé sexuelle et reproductive. Un guide a été produit à cet effet afin d'outiller les jeunes féministes du monde entier à mieux participer au forum Génération Égalité. Je dirais également que les ressources nécessaires à ce processus et le Front Panantubri qui a été mis en place par l'IPBF travaille également à développer le leadership et à construire un mouvement de jeunes féministes leaders au niveau de l'Afrique de l'Ouest francophone afin de soutenir nos actions et d'atteindre les objectifs. Et en 3, je mettrai un point important sur le renforcement des capacités sur la collecte et le traitement des données afin de visibiliser les évidences et les réalités sur les jeunes filles et les jeunes femmes afin d'avoir une base fondamentale pour la conduite des actions de plaidoyer. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Micheline. Now I want to pass the word to Nayeli.
Muchas gracias. Pues yo creo que lo que necesitamos son más aliadas, más mujeres, no solo... Hola, ¿me escuchan?
Sí, te escuchamos perfecto.
Súper. Entonces, decía que más aliadas, más mujeres, no solo con cargos públicos, sino con poder. Necesitamos también instancias fortalecidas y una democracia fuerte y basada en derechos humanos y sobre todo con la visión de la igualdad. El secretario general Antonio Guterres decía en el marco de esta CSW que la participación equitativa de las mujeres cambiaría las reglas del juego en la forma en la que lo necesitamos. Y esto nos tiene que llevar a pensar que justo como hemos venido jugando, no es bueno ni para las mujeres ni para la sociedad en general. Entonces, nos tiene que llevar a pensar que la igualdad es un asunto de sostenibilidad y no podemos esperar más. Decía también que solo 22 países están encabezados por una mujer y que al ritmo actual, la paridad a nivel de jefes de gobierno no se alcanzará antes de 2150. Yo lo escucho y me pone la piel de gallina. Necesitamos otros 130 años más, o más bien vamos a estar otros 130 años más dominados por hombres que toman el mismo tipo de decisiones que en los últimos 130 años. De verdad, esto debería ponernos a pensar que como humanidad estamos fallando, que necesitamos la igualdad. Y si a esto le agregamos los estragos del COVID, que está profundizando la pobreza, en donde, por ejemplo, en América Latina en 2020 se incrementó en 22% la pobreza de las mujeres, hace que esto sea urgente. Pone en evidencia también que si bien las luchas y las conquistas de las generaciones que nos antecedieron han sido fundamentales y las apreciamos muchísimo, no han sido suficientes y requieren un cambio en tiempo y forma. Y como son urgentes, seguramente las formas de exigirlas no nos van a gustar y seguramente no van a ser cómodas, pero son urgentes y necesitamos que sucedan pronto. Es por eso que también me sumo a la necesidad o pongo la necesidad también de fortalecer al movimiento de mujeres jóvenes, que me atrevería a decir que actualmente es uno de los movimientos políticos más fuertes. Es indispensable que no solo sigan existiendo estas mujeres jóvenes en las calles y en los espacios públicos, sino además que sean más y que estén más fortalecidas. Y esto implica invertir. Y me parece fundamental que el tema de los fondos se toque, porque implica recursos e implica también revisar los tipos de financiamiento. Porque como ya vimos, las mujeres jóvenes tienen otras formas de organizarse y otras formas de luchar. También necesitamos revisar la parte política, necesitamos sobre todo impulsar acciones que permitan que esta generación de mujeres, adolescentes y jóvenes no pierdan la fe en la democracia, en el gobierno, en el Estado, porque son estas mujeres jóvenes las que están tomando las calles, las que están visibilizando las demandas, las que están gritando de rabia, son ellas a las que esperamos de este otro lado. Queremos que ya sean el relevo generacional en la política, en los puestos de representación y en el poder. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Nayeli. Rashana? Rashana, can you hear me?
Yes.
The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. So I come from a society where male-dominated society where women are treated as second citizens, as I mentioned earlier. And I am having friends who have many abortions because their husband demands to get birth to son. And I hear that they had several abortions, even doctor was suggesting them to not to have abortion because they could get serious health consequences. Though they have not power to say no to the abortion, or they are afraid to give birth to many daughters because they think girls are less valuable and can't have good life. So this gives me the question why we as a woman or as a girl have to struggle. And our struggle starts from the womb to the earth. They don't even get rights to get born in this beautiful earth. And for me, bodily autonomy and conversation on this topic feels far away because we are struggling to live first. We get afraid to move out of our door, to go outside in the society, being afraid that maybe there is someone who is going to throw acid on our face. Maybe we will lose our beauty and our body for the rest of our life. We have to get afraid to move outside, thinking maybe there could be someone who could rape us or maybe kill us after the rape. We get afraid to move out from the house, being afraid maybe someone will trick us or traffic us. We are in that zone. We feel insecure outside and even inside because we have seen many examples that girls and even a small child being raped from their own father, uncles and brothers. And this doesn't create the environment for women to talk loudly and to get their bodily autonomy. I imagine of a society where women have their equal opportunity and access to equal rights to control, to have control over their own body. But the fact is not that easier. We have to struggle with very unhealthy, abusive relationship when girls are married in such a young age. She is tortured every day. It feels like being death or meeting with death every day with that severe harm to their bodies, physically or mentally tortured. So I will be very specific what is needed in terms of getting leadership or have women's access their bodily autonomy. I'll be very to the point because we are having a school. I started having a kindergarten aiming to give platform to those children who are raising up with abusive relationship or very unhealthy environment where they see every day their friends fight or physically punishment. So I wanted to give them at least 6 hours of happiness or 6 hours of learning environment in child-friendly environment. So me and my husband, we started a school. It's for free, and we're having. It's been 3 years, and we are having more than 100 students. So we see the change from that small move because I don't claim myself that I can make difference in the world. No, for me, the world is my community. And of course, I can make difference in my own community because I am alive and I have powers. So I can teach people and I can at least move forward small steps. So investing for education starting from preschool is the first basic step we can take, and slowly saving girls from being child bride and letting them to complete their higher education or providing them income opportunities or job opportunities and making them financially empowered, then they will have their power to say no to those forms of violence or those forms of harassment. So they can be the protector for themselves because no one is going to protect them in the time of danger. So it's needed if UNFPA could collaborate with the grassroots advocate or watchdog like me and like other speakers, let us know that you are here with us and let's invest in education. And education can make long-term change and long-term difference. So those 100 children we are raising now, they are the future leaders of future women leaders who will definitely fight for bodily autonomy, and maybe they will have freedom to move out in the society without thinking that their body can be in danger. So I imagine of that society, and I want my daughter to feel safe and to feel proud of being born as a girl and having a body, a women body, and still feel proud of having that body. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roshana. We hear you and we stand in solidarity with you and your cause. And just to close these remarks, I think that as a youth representative and from the Youth Coalition, I think that what we need is a stronger frameworks on meaningful youth engagement and accountability for youth, for meaningful youth participation. And that's something that we have been pushing very strongly during the Generation Equality Forum with a youth manifesto that we have drafted in a participatory way, and that will be circulated to tomorrow. So thank you very much for these remarks. And well, I just want to thank you, all of our speakers. And now I want to give the floor to Ivy Peterson, Deputy Executive Director of Management at UNFPA, to give the closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Eunice, and thank you to all the panelists for fantastic, inspirational interventions here. And I feel very humble to give closing remarks at this gathering, and not least after the strong statements we just heard from our panelists on what is needed, what do we need. Of course, Roshana, we are with you. We want to work with you from UNFPA side. I think the theme of CSW this year is women leadership. It is needed. It's so important to have focus on that. I also think we have seen today that there is a lot of women leadership already going on. And we knew that, but I think we had some marvelous and very, very inspirational participants here. We're proud from UNFPA side to be a partner in generation equality and also in the coalition on bodily autonomy. And yeah, again, I feel quite humble to be in this position now, because there's so much to do, but there's also so much to build on. Be sure that we will remain extremely committed to work with you all. We should have had a couple of hours more for really getting deep into this, but we have covered the whole tablet, so to speak. And I really like the very short and concise input here towards the end. We can use that education, work with media, work with the women's organization, and have all the on the rights as well as Sarah said. It's about basic dignity. It's about ensuring women and girls their rights to decide on over their own bodies and over their own life. And that's so basic. And I think this has been a marvelous and very, very inspirational session. And we have so much to build on, so much leadership to build on. We are at the UNFPA right now working on our next strategic plan for the next 4 years. With, of course, a focus on gender equality and how can we achieve the 2030 agenda. And we will in particular prioritize young women's leadership, because that's what we need, as was said also from Gabriela from Mexico, that change of culture doesn't start with the privileged elderly generation. It starts with the young people, and that's what we need to work with young women all over the world. We have fantastic example here: Mexico, Sierra Leone, Nepal, Jordan, Bosnia. But we can also just read in the press every day about how women's rights are under pressure, on how women's sexuality is under pressure, on their right to decide themselves. So just to round off, time has run. As I said, we need a couple of more hours. Hopefully there will be an opportunity. Thank you again, everybody, for really your leadership, your courage, and your very inspirational inputs into this session. And thank you, Eunice, for having led us through the whole session in this eloquent way. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. And just to close, I just want to add that on behalf of all the youth bodies on the Generation Equality Forum, we're asking to fund the youth and to fund youth-led initiatives. And on behalf of the host, UNFPA, I would like to thank all the panelists again and the audience for tuning in. We will be sharing a post-event communication to everyone who registered. Thank you very much and have an amazing day. Bye.